Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Say Report, the first episode of 2020. This is your host, Siege Sarek, along with my host companion, Devin D.
Barbara
Decker.
Walters.
Bob, wah, wah, wah.
Hello, and this is 2020.
Oh, man.
That's the voice, right? That's the voice that Steven Spielberg did on all of his shows when he made fun of her.
Steven Spielberg? Yes.
Well, Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and Freakazoid.
Now I get what you're saying. I thought you meant like he was walking onto like Oprah being like, hey, you ever check out this Barbara Walters chick? Wah, 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 wah.
Hello, I'm Steven Spielberg. Have you seen Barbara Walters? That's really more Rob Reiner. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, at least my bad impressions are good enough that you know who I'm going for.
Yeah.
I love Rob Reiner. They're like, legitimately, I'm starting 2020 off with the declaration that apparently I friggin' love Rob Reiner.
Okay.
I had no idea. I mean, my favorite movie of all time is A Few Good Men. Rob Reiner directed that.
Mm-hmm.
Second movie that I'm a huge fan of, used to watch it every Tuesday back in the Hollywood video days, Princess Bride. That's another Rob Reiner.
Mm-hmm.
When Harry Met Sally, perhaps the only New Year's Eve movie, unless we count New Year's Eve, which I don't.
We don't.
I'm going to be honest. That's Rob Reiner, too. And then you got, like, Misery, and then he kind of just drops off. Frank Darabont starts doing the adaptations of Stephen King.
Yeah.
So, Rob Reiner names his production company Castle Rock.
Right.
Because of Stand By Me and Misery.
Mm-hmm.
And then Frank Darabont does Shawshank Redemption, and they're like, Rob Reiner who?
Yeah. I gotta say, though, like, growing up and everybody kind of losing their shit over, like, John Hughes films, and I'm not here to pass judgment on that shit. Like, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is still one of my favorite movies and things like that. But, like, whenever people talk about John Hughes and the way that he affected them as like growing up, just not just as artists, but as people. That's the way that I've always felt about Rob Reiner. Like the immediate thought in my head when somebody talks about John Hughes is, yeah, I was always more of a Rob Reiner guy. Not that they were making the same kinds of movies, but
not
it feels
at
like
all.
But that time period when kids were sitting around watching Breakfast Club, I was watching Stand By Me. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's.
I know exactly what you mean, because when kids were sitting around watching Breakfast Club, I was watching A Few Good Men.
Well, right.
Like, yeah. I don't know what was going on in my house the summer of 93, because that comes out December 92, and literally that movie was watched every Saturday.
I mean, it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
We just watched it when we went home for the Thanksgiving holiday. Stepped into the house in Rhode Island, and it was just on one of the movie channels for like 2 days in a row. So you better believe I watched it through like 3 times.
Yeah, because it's great, and what's really crazy is that it's not a short movie by any stretch. There's a lot there, but it's quick. Like, it feels so fast. I mean, that's Aaron Sorkin too, not giving anyone a chance to breathe while they talk.
Right.
But oh my goodness, not that I'm surprised that the hallmark guardian angel guiding light of the Say Report would be Rob Reiner films, but I think that's what we just stumbled upon. I love Ferris Bueller, and there's that little bit of me that feels like I lived a life as close to that like movie life that he lived as possible in the real world. But I mean, like, confession time, I didn't see that until 8th grade. But it was 4th grade when I was playing the clarinet for the first time, when my band teacher said, "Who do you think you are, Ferris Bueller?" I didn't know what he meant.
Never had a lesson.
Never had one lesson. Obviously, I didn't. I was just learning how to play the clarinet. So, is he clever? I don't know what like the credit I should give to my band teacher for that reference. But then, like 8th grade, it's on Comedy Central, and I'm like, well, everybody keeps comparing me to this guy. I gotta watch it. And I'm like, oh wow, damn, I get it.
I feel called out right now.
Wow. This is the first in my many defeats. Or is that like a victory? I guess it'd have to be a victory, because I've met plenty of people. This is a for real conversation that I had with somebody who was like, I always tried to live my life like Ferris Bueller, and then I meet you and you actually did, and I just feel like a failure. And I'm like,
the trick is, man, is that you got to try and live your life like Cameron.
Well, are they the same person? Do you ascribe to that theory at all? That Ferris Bueller is this imaginary friend?
There's way too much narratively for me to describe it in any like real sense. However, I am fascinated by the conversation that, like, as a representation in art, the idea of everybody has a little bit of Cameron in them and everybody has a little bit of Ferris in them. That I can definitely like that. I can get down on that jam.
Dude, I could ascribe to that because, like, I mean, it was my birthday over the weekend, so and there was a time. It was great. I have stories to regale thee with about 2 really great days, and then something happened to me like Saturday night, and yeah, I turned into Cameron a little bit because there is a little bit of that, like, let my Cameron go,
right?
And I want to just pretend I'm drowning.
Yeah, I've never ascribed to the Fight Club fandom, like the idea that they are one and the same and that Cameron's just crazy, or I believe that's the gist of it, right?
I mean, it's how he wishes he could be.
Well, what's weird to me is the idea of thinking of Ferris being the fake one and Cameron being the real one when we see so much solid evidence of his of Ferris's life.
Yes.
Right? Whereas Cameron, we literally never see another person in his life. He talks a lot about his feelings about his family, but never once do we actually physically see them. And he lives in, as far as I can tell, a fucking treehouse in the woods. Like, there's right? Because there's this really weird, like, if you were going to choose one of them to tell me is not the real person, Ferris is not the one I'd focus on.
My God, this I love this theory. I love what we're doing right here because we're deconstructing a theory that I personally have never found any, like, love or belief in, but there are far more instances in that film of Cameron being fake,
right,
than anything. And I mean, God, like, I mean, I don't want to sound like a jerk, and I feel like I'm about to sound like a jerk, but I'm a pretty bombastic guy. I mean, I think if I were to be on the float in a parade and, like, that wasn't planned, you, Sejin, as one of my oldest friends, probably wouldn't be surprised that happened.
I was literally going to make a joke about it earlier. We just bowled over the moment. So no, I would not be surprised.
But it's one of those things where, like, sometimes being the bombastic guy, sometimes maybe you don't want to be on. So, like, it would be very believable for Ferris Bueller to invent and have this imaginary friend who is his polar opposite.
Right.
Because, like, and it's still, like, you know, and the whole thing with, you know, Sloane and, you know, Did You Watch Me Change and all this other stuff, like, he can be as cool as he wants with his younger girlfriend and, like, let's get married and all this. But, you know, like, Cameron, the Cameron stuff could just be him showing his vulnerability to this girl that he loves.
Well, and his naivety, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like as cool as he is, Cameron embodies this idea of the thing that we're not sure about, vulnerability for sure. And like there's also this beautiful idea that of now that we're talking about this, Sloane being almost aware of that and, like, just nurturing it as opposed to it being something that gets between her and Ferris, and it becomes a much more interesting conversation this way.
Yeah, this is the theory that people should be talking about, that there's no Cameron. Of course, it would take a couple of guys like us to actually get to a theory like that. Like, I don't mean to... Like, I feel like most people in the world are like, I'm Cameron Fry, I wish I were Ferris Bueller. And it's like, no, but it's like, I could see the benefit of being this guy who, like, he's sick and nobody even really cares. Like, he's able to take that day off without any of the rigmarole. Like, right. I was like, man, wouldn't it be great if, like, my parents just trusted me instead of me having to lie to them all the time?
I mean, we don't even hear Cameron's name mentioned by a teacher, right?
Well,
like,
that's
Rooney never...
actually the place where it would come from for me, because it's something that's always bothered me. And it's actually, when you said it, I'm like, so this is true. If the Fight Club theory about Ferris Bueller's Day Off is real, this is totally not what I wanted to start this episode about. Just for the record, everybody.
Never is, man. 2020 and nothing's different.
Exactly. Welcome to the show. There's this moment in Ferris Bueller's Day Off that always bothers me. And It's Ben Stein doing the roll call. And he does the Bueller, 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 like that whole scene, that, like, iconic moment. And then the next name that we see him call, with almost no, like, downtime at all, is Fry, which is Cameron's last name. Now that means that in Ferris Bueller's homeroom or first class, there's not a single C, D, or E last name. And there's no F last names that begin with FA through FP. Not that there are a lot of, FQ. Not that there are a lot of FQ names.
Fuck what?
But like, so I've always thought that that was strange, that there's this jump from Bueller to Fry. But what if that's because there is no Fry? And it's just Ferris Bueller imagining that. I mean, geez, you could have all that. Like, Ferris Bueller's just home the whole day, and he imagines, what if I had a friend who could actually do this stuff with me? And I could still believe all, like, God, Ferris Bueller then becomes this tragic character who actually is sad, who actually needs a sidekick in order to go out and fight crime and live his best life.
Yeah, I mean, it also makes Cameron, and this just speaks to the nature of this movie and how strong of an actually like concept and execution it is that they clearly complete each other. Whether or not we want to buy into this silliness about them being the same person, no. But like I said earlier, I've always thought like the point of that story is that the three of them, the two of them and Sloane, all three of them complete each other in a way that is scary and vulnerable because they're going to be moving on soon and it's going to be breaking. Like, that's the tragedy of that movie, is that trifecta is not going to last.
Right. And
it's beautiful, right? And so with that in mind, the next logical step is thinking like, how is that represented within me? It's not hard to get to these particular theories, right? In terms of evidence presented by the film, it's a weird leap to make that Ferris is not real.
Because we meet his parents, we meet his sister. Freaking Jeffrey Jones is all day looking for him. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Cameron is allowed to take out a 64 freaking...
Yep.
Like, I can't think of the car, and I'm like, is it a Cadillac or is it a Mustang? It's a Mustang.
I don't know, but he wipes it with a diaper every day.
But my dad, he doesn't drive it. He just wipes it with a diaper. Like, we don't see his parents. And let's think about, like, Cameron, for destroying his father's car, there's going to be serious consequences. It's not like he, like, ruined his 1986, like, Toyota.
No, this is like military school, like, you will be indebted to me for the rest of your life type shit that has happened to him.
Either I kill you or you now owe me your life.
Or, you know, what actually happened in the 80s in these situations is Cameron ends up breaking off from this fucking dickhead of a man and hopefully finds himself in like New York City or something. And I want to see that fucking movie, like him as like the failed artist in like Chicago or something. Like that is what happens to a kid like him, because that's not a completely inaccurate representation of some of the people that we knew in high school.
That's very true.
But I mean, like, that again, one of the beauties of that film.
Yeah, and I think, and also, if we're talking John Hughes, which, again, I also have never been... I didn't see my first John Hughes movie until Ferris Bueller in 8th grade, so I'm 13 years old when I see my first John Hughes film. And then... There's
John Hughes films that sneak up on you, because I would say that too, but then I remember,
I guess I saw Home Alone.
Home Alone,
but
right, yeah.
Fuck Home Alone. That doesn't... Home Alone is so not... Like, Home Alone, I guess, was the first one I saw. But that's what I was going with, though, is that, like, so Ferris Bueller's Day Off is the first John Hughes, like, brat packy movie that I saw. But I didn't realize who John Hughes truly was until, like, 10th grade. When I started watching the Clerks films. And, you know, Kevin Smith is all like, John Hughes is my muse, and that's the reason I make movies. And I'm like,
and there was like a weird resurgence of like of Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire. And
I hate St. Elmo's Fire. Have you seen St. Elmo's Fire?
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about it? Like, honestly, when's the last time you watched it?
St. Elmo's Fire is the movie that plays at like 3:00 in the morning on TBS, and I think, oh shit, St. Elmo's Fire, and then I put it on. I'm like, oh right, I don't like this movie, and I stop like every time. Like, you know what it is? I think I confuse it with Mystic Pizza from time to time, which I love.
I could
Mystic
totally see that. I could totally.
Like,
I mean, the Demi Moore, Julia Roberts conflagration, as
right.
what we've been dealing with since Mystic Pizza.
No, like St. Elmo's Fire is not. No, I've seen it in full. I think I sat down and watched it once in that whole like mess in like the 10th to 12th grade, like you mentioned, when everybody started putting like fucking. I was gonna say Judd Hirsch. Posters up. Oh God, Judd Nelson posters up on their wall. You know,
I support Judd Hirsch posters. Alex Rieger, for a long time was my moral compass. I friggin' love Taxi.
Oh, man. But yeah, so like so probably 10th or 11th grade is when I last saw it properly start to finish. Since then, I've seen 15-20 minute chunks about on and off every few months.
Yeah, and I feel like here's the thing. Here's St. Elmo's Fire. What I feel like everybody just glazes over, and if I'm wrong, you please correct me. What I feel everyone glazes over in St. Elmo's Fire is that Emilio Estevez is a fucking stalker. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is stalking Andy McDowell's character Dale, and like to the point that she is uncomfortable. And then at the end, she kisses him.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, you're digging into the issue, right, with John Hughes in general.
Well, I mean, John Hughes is not St. Elmo's Fire. It's the unfortunate thing is
it is considered Brat Pack, though.
It's Brat Pack, but Brat Pack is those movies that have Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, not Charlie Sheen, but Charlie Sheen's understudy Judd Nelson. Right. You just did this. You just messed up the same guy. Molly Ringwald, like all of those.
Right, but it's that issue that we come to with 80s teen comedy writ large, with just John Hughes being one of the heads of state in that certain time frame, right? But it's that issue that we're all looking back on now and going, all right, we were perpetrating a lot of really ill-informed behavior, bad behavior, evil behavior on like essentially white men. We were letting a lot of white men get away with a lot of shit in this time in these movies. You know, we've talked very recently about Revenge of the Nerds and the rape scene, or there's now, you know, talking about this and stalking, or even you know, God love him, but John Cusack. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Say Anything?
I would say anything, any of it. I mean, even One Crazy Summer, like he's got his weird moments. Now, the difference with John Cusack is that he seems very, when you watch his characters in those movies, there seems to be an awareness to what's going on, and he's very quick to call himself out in those movies, and other people call him out for things. So like those get a weird pass for me, but I'll be the first one to admit those are still present. Those elements of the story are still there.
I feel like I've done this. I feel like I've done this on every podcast I've ever been a part of, so I must have done it here at some point. But I just want to remind everybody, because you know, pop culture has done this fog of memory regarding Say Anything and the whole boombox scene.
Right.
That is not John Cusack's character. I can't think of his name. Lance, maybe? Is that his name in that? Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not John Cusack's character in that film trying to get her to notice him. It is him trying to get her to take him back and remember why they were together in the first place. Because I feel like every pop culture reference to it is some guy like, I'm going to declare my love, just like John Cusack did in Say Anything. And it's like, but you need to remember that they dated for a while, and then Frasier's dad said, no, you can't date him anymore. I can't think of his name, and that really upsets
John
me.
Maloney?
John Maloney, thank you.
Yeah,
because he's Ione Skye's father in that. And he's just like, Lane is his name. Lane has no future, and you are going to do great things. So I want you to end this relationship that you have with him. And she just leaves him. She just breaks up with him because her dad tells her to. And then, like, his last moment, his, like, last try to get her back is to play the song that was playing on the radio when they lost their virginities to each other. Like, I was at a movie trivia night at a pub, and they're like, when is this song played during Say Anything? And they played In Your Eyes. And, of course, I wrote down, while, you know, Lane and Ione Skye lose their virginity to each other in the backseat of Lane's car. And I was called wrong because everybody else said it's when he's playing it on the boombox, that iconic scene. And I'm like, no, like there's meaning to why he's playing that song and why he's doing that.
Yeah.
And everybody just seems to forget that scene, and it blows my mind.
It's just it's pretty tame compared to some of this other stuff though that's going on at this time, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And there's a lot of weirdness with things like stalker mentality that ends up, we find it still going through in the 90s when like you see these kids that like break into people's rooms and girls come upstairs to find a boy in their room unexpectedly. Like, that shit ain't cool. Like, get out, Sean. Clarissa didn't give you permission to be here.
Okay, it's Sean. Oh, Sean is his name.
Yeah.
I think she did give him permission to be up there. I thought you meant Sean Hunter. I thought you combined
Sean
the
Hunter.
two.
Sean Hunter has some bad moments too.
I mean, they all do. That's
right.
like that's the negative side of nostalgia, and I am happy that people are actually noticing it, because like that Say Anything scene, like, it has become synonymous with like a guy being a creep. But, like, honestly, he's just fighting for their relationship. He's trying to tell we're both 18. Your dad can't lead your life anymore.
Right. Yeah. But
is it a public display of like a very private moment? Definitely.
And it is also a pretty strong violation of the idea that no means no. I mean, she has told him that they need space. She needs space and to not be near him, and he is forcing himself into her life after she has explicitly told him that she is not happy about it. So like it's definitely a complication of that, and like, art should be a complication of norms. Like, that's fine. But when you have your head honcho nerd pretending to be somebody else so that he can have sex with that guy's girlfriend, like, there's no excuse for that. Dude, right?
The no excuse is that she's like, oh man, that rape was so good, I'm gonna marry him.
Right. Yeah.
And then he's gonna be Lizzie McGuire's dad.
Man. Yeah. And so, like, in terms of what we could have been watching at that time, just to bring it all the way back to the beginning here, Rob Reiner was a hell of a thing.
Yeah, we kind of made the right decision. Not to say anyone else made the wrong decision, but
except you kind of just did. But that's okay.
No. I think what I'm trying to say is we made the right decision for us. Mm-hmm. When you look at like how the fundamentals that we picked up from things like Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, A Few Good Men ended up shaping us as human beings. I mean, first of all, we probably wouldn't have found each other. Let's just like be honest about that. But then, like, second of all, okay, so the reason why I love A Few Good Men, the reason why A Few Good Men is my favorite movie is very simple. It is not because the script is amazing. It's not because the acting is electric. It is because it is the first time in my life that I can remember seeing a movie that doesn't have a love story in it.
Yeah, there really isn't one.
Like,
I was wondering, isn't there something between him and Demi Moore? But I think I'm completely imposing that now that I say that.
They added a scene where they go out to dinner. There's a recess. She says, "Let me take you out to dinner." And they eat crabs together. And he's like, "How come you're always giving me your resume?" And it feels like it's going to be this moment. First of all, it doesn't exist in the original stage production. That scene where they go out to dinner is not in the stage production. So it is something that was added to the movie specifically. Mm-hmm. And it really does feel like this moment where, oh God, something's going to happen. They're going to become romantic. But really, like, he just asked her, like, why do you feel this need to prove yourself to me? Like, I get it. I know how good you are. I've been working with you. And it's like, it's oddly, based on what the stage production is, which is, Demi Moore's Commander Galloway trying to prove herself in this man's army. Well, this man's Marines, but you know what I'm saying. It's the only moment where, like, you get to see that characterization, because for the screen, Tom Hanks's Lieutenant Kaffee becomes the main character.
Tom Cruise's, but yeah.
Sorry. I have Hanks on the mind, but we'll get to that later on in the episode.
Yeah.
Like, Kaffee becomes the main character, where in the original stage production, Galloway is the main character. So But the fact that they don't end up getting together, that like there's no flirtatiousness, it's like it's all business. I love that. And you can tell that that's kind of the story that Rob Reiner wanted to tell for a long time. When you think that when Harry Met Sally had them not get together in the original script.
Right.
But then, like, by spending time with him, he's like, people are going to hate this movie if these two don't end up together.
Yeah, he's not stupid.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, I think for me, the big thing about just to put a cap on A Few Good Men, because I do want to definitely talk about some Tom Hanksness and other things.
We got stuff to talk about. Yeah.
But I think for me, the thing about A Few Good Men that really struck me and that I will always love it for is it was the first movie to really teach me as a young, audience member about the idea of a bittersweet ending. Yeah,
and I mean, I think that's kind of where I'm coming from too. Yours is sort of a nicer way of putting it. I'm focusing on the romantic aspect.
No, I mean specifically.
No, but you mean specifically the fact that they're not found guilty of murder, they're not found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, but they're definitely found guilty of conduct unbecoming of an officer and discharged from the Marines, which is their life. And it's this moment, and then the salute, which I've had like debates about how that is such fan service and completely undercuts the whole movie, and I'm like, no, it's I don't care if that's how you feel about it. Like, it's a moment because it's the first time that Dawson actually respects Lieutenant Caffey. I don't know, it's a good movie. I love A Few Good Men, and so does Sejan, and there's other stuff to talk about, but I'm gonna let him lead so I could dry the tears that are coming out my eyes.
Let's cap this episode in important talk on each end. So in the middle, let's talk about this baseball game you made me play.
You mean 2020 Super Baseball or it's Super 2020. Baseball 2020?
It's 2020. We gotta play some baseball. Except we don't. Apparently, a bunch of robots and Amazonian ladies do.
Yeah. First of all, way off. They were way off about what baseball was going to be in 17 years. So
I do understand where Blurns ball came from on Futurama, though.
Oh my God, so influential. Yeah, because it's not only is it intergender, but it's inter species play.
Species. Well, I don't know.
Well, there's no lizards or anything. There's robots and there's humans, and both men and women are represented, which I really appreciate. But this game, so New Year's Eve, I ended up doing the stream a little bit. And we figured out who was going to be the best of the decade in games like Tag Team Wrestling and Super Spike V-Ball. With Sejan, I need you to get your hands on Super Spike V-Ball because sometime this year we're going to have a for real tournament. And I think that you could be a real contender in that game.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, so all that, and then we were just going through, all the games that were available, and we found 2020 Super Baseball, and it was like 12:06, and we're like, oh, we should play 2020 Super Baseball because it's 2020. But you didn't get to the part of the game that is legitimately banana pants.
I went back. So my experience with 2020 baseball is Devin. You hit me up and you go, I need you to play this game for me before we record next time. And I was like, okay, of course. Yeah. So I went out, found my ROM, did my thing. I start the game up. And the first thing is it's like pick a team. And I was like, okay, there's like this like Wonder Woman looking team. And I was like, well, obviously that's the one I'm going for. And I start this game up and it's, basic video game baseball. Okay, this is 1991. Am I wrong? 93. And so like, it's just pretty simple. You either get to pitch or you get to hit. Like that's going to be this whole game. With a little bit of like, you can put a little curve on the ball and or when you're pitching or when you're hitting, you can change your position and all that sort of stuff to make sure that you're in the right spot in the box to get the best hit and all that. So like there's definitely strategy and technique to it. But I get about like 3 innings into a game and all of a sudden the other team is playing, the AI team is playing, and this menu pops up with this like robot referee who's like pointing at all of these upgrades that you can purchase. And like I had noticed like money things happening, but it is like watching at Japanese television to me. There was like 6 things going on at once on the screen around the corners. I started to just think of them as just like flavor text to whatever was going on in the game and just ignored them. So like I had no idea what had been actually like racking up number wise around me, besides like, like outs and strikes and balls and all that
baseball
shit.
things, not super baseball.
All of a sudden, this guy lays down like $3,000 for like a friggin' like mech suit, and his batter comes up to bat, and they're like covered in silver like plating, and they take one swing, and they get a home run. Like they got a friggin' it was a 3-run hit off of me, and I was like, what the hell did I just see? And then sure enough, the more the game got on, the more the computer would dip into this menu to start like changing up all of these power-ups and stuff, and I was like, what is happening? Especially because the more they use the power-ups, I was actually still doing okay against them, not buying anything. So the end of the game came around, and I had lost by like 2 runs. And then on top of that, I ended up then winning, though, because I had all of this money that they didn't have because I didn't spend any. So I was like, I don't know what just happened, Devin. I think I lost, but I think I won. And then you were like, oh, you didn't spend any money, did you? No, I didn't even know I could.
Right. So that's the thing. So the one thing that 2020 Super Baseball got correct is that it don't matter about the game. It matters about the money that we made playing the game. Right? Moneyball at the forefront. Speaking of like other crazy movies. I think Aaron Sorkin wrote that too. But yeah. So that's it. So what you missed out on because you never opened that menu, and the reason why I'm like, Sejan, you need to play this game,
I still don't understand it.
Is that there's an upgrade system, right? Mm-hmm. And you can upgrade your hitting, your pitching, and I think your running. Like those are like the things. But then there's a 4th power up, which is called Robot. And I stumbled upon Robot as a power up, and I had a human female as my pitcher, and I did the power up of Robot, thinking like maybe she'll get a robot arm or something like that. No. She became a robot. So like I don't know if we uploaded her consciousness, if we removed her brain and put it in a robot body. So we're New Year's Eve drunk, playing Super Baseball, and now like at this point we're like the friggin' horror. Like that poor woman is now a robot. And she's a better baseball player because she has no feelings anymore. She's cold, unfeeling. So we started like building out this whole canon of what it means to play Super Baseball in the fictional year 2020. And like that's really the thing. So I'm sorry that you didn't get to experience that firsthand, but you did see that like upgrades were a part of it. So like, and we saw those upgrades too because, we had upgraded hitting and saw like, oh, okay, so now your arms look stronger and all that. And then I'm like, I'm going to do the robot. I'm going to see what happens then. And yeah, she's dead now. She's a robot. Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I play that baseball game like I play all baseball games. Just keep swinging. Eventually, you'll get a home run, and you get enough to score some runs, and there you go.
I play that baseball game like I play baseball games. I'm gonna keep putting it down the center of the home plate and counting on my ability to field to end this.
That's the other thing for pitching, yeah.
Because the hitting in that game is crazy. Says all the areas where like it would normally be a home run, those people are under glass. Probably some sort of futuristic space glass, because it never breaks.
Yeah, right. And so the ball just rolls back onto the field.
Yeah, it comes back to the field unless you hit it into the home run zone, which is center field, center mast. So I'm glad you experienced it. But yeah, that's why that game, first of all, way off from what baseball is, except for the fact that we don't really care about the games. We care about the money.
We just care about the money. Yeah. No, man. I definitely was the entire time I was sitting here thinking, as silly as this is, it's pretty awesome that this is what they thought baseball was going to be in 2020 because they're not totally wrong. Even some of the baseball stuff. Even some of the robot baseball stuff. I was like, there's definitely robots that can do this right now. I know there are. So like, yeah, that's not too far off.
There's robots that can run the bases, there's robots that can pitch, and there's robots that can hit. But we haven't yet taken all 3 things and put it into one robot body.
That I know of.
Well, yeah, okay. Johnny 6 could be out there, But if he
His
were
name is David Ortiz.
let's talk about it. Let's talk about the fact that if there were a for real robot baseball player, and I'm not talking like David Ortiz. We've seen him bleed, Sejan. But what if he arranged that whole stabbing so that we could get thrown off the scent? He's like, 2020 Super Baseball is coming. I need to show them I'm human.
I am feeling human pain.
The blood. Watch as it rushes from my thorax. Torso.
Red blood. Red blood.
Blood is red. Blue in the veins. Due to oxidation. I'm hurt. Oh man, no. But let's be honest. There are baseball teams. There's a thing that we went through in the 90s. Not that this episode's just going to be about the 90s.
Apparently it is. 2020, the episode about the 90s.
Before fucking Moneyball happened, before the Oakland Athletics learned how to make money, even though your team's not great, there were a shit ton of baseball movies about baseball teams that found a gimmick in order to bring fans in.
Right.
Be it Rookie of the Year, the Major League movies, Ed with Joey Tribbiani and the gorilla.
Joey with the monkey. Joey with the baseball monkey.
Freaking the one Angels in the Outfield. Like,
had to bring in the Angels.
Like, not, and you know what it is? That movie is basically about like, oh, let's bring in Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He'll flap his arms. And people will watch baseball. He'll give them false confidence. Little Big League. Like, there was this whole time where the movies were trying to convince us that baseball was interesting. For Chris' sake, Air Bud 4 is 7-inning fetch.
Is Field of Dreams a good movie, or is it just a good baseball movie?
No, Field of Dreams is a good movie. It's a terrible baseball movie. It's a terrible baseball movie. They play baseball in it in like 2 scenes. It's more about Ray, his last name escapes me right now, journey to find the Salinger stand-in and
Ray
Moonlight
Journey,
Graham.
the lonely boy.
Yeah, it's just, and you know, and that whole speech at the end about like, people will come just to watch the game. And it's like, people won't come to the middle of Indiana to watch some like farmer who put a baseball field.
Unless you got some of them ballpark Franks, man. I'd be there for that.
Oh, they are there, but they can't because she almost chokes on one and dies.
Oh no!
Spoilers for Field of Dreams. But yeah, like that was the thing. So like, I also get where game developers in 1993 are like, man, all this crazy stuff that they're trying to do to baseball, can you imagine what it's going to be like in 13 years? But last thing, even though Moneyball has happened, even though Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill finally made money, even though your team's not great, if there were a robot baseball player, some team that you and I don't know the name of would have it on the roster. Just to get people in to watch the game.
The fucking Yankees. You think with the amount of money that the Yankees spend on baseball, and this isn't a judgment call one way or the other. Fuck the Yankees, but what I'm saying is not a judgment call one way or the other. With the amount of money that they spend and used to spend every season on players, can you like they would definitely just for the gimmick have a robot that would, even if it just came out during the 7th inning stretch.
And they'd call it Babe with a 3.
Oh no!
Ruth.
Oh no! It'd be so disrespectful, and it would definitely be happening if it was
if it
affordable.
Were possible.
If it were possible and in their price range affordable, I think that we would be seeing it.
Oh wow!
It's going to be Japan. Like I love.
I can't believe that's the real.
You're going to
thing.
be the first one. You're going to be the first place to have an all robot baseball team. So.
Japan loves baseball. There's the proof. There's no robot baseballs yet because Japan loves baseball, and if they put together a robot baseball team, they would totally, like, it'd be everywhere.
And they would also have its own, like, music CD as well. Like it'd be
I mean, that's what I honestly miss about the Cold War. And there's not a lot, just honestly, a lot of terrible things happened during the Cold War. But media where it was like, U.S. versus Russia, but not in fighting, like not in warfare, but like Rocky's gonna fight Ivan Drago, and we're gonna see who's better. Like the Miracle on Ice, which is something that really happened.
Right.
Like if that stuff were still going on and Japan had the robot baseball team, they would totally be like, "We challenge you, American Red Sox, beat our robots." I mean, maybe not these Red Sox, but like the Red Sox that could win again. Last year's
best players
Red Sox
of all time all together, and we call it Uncle Drew 2.
I mean, I love Uncle Drew, but I don't know if I'd see an Uncle Drew 2 where the Uncle Drew guys play robots.
In baseball, I bet you if they made it baseball themed and the other team was robots, I think you'd have more people.
That's true. I wouldn't want to watch robots play basketball. That is where I'm drawing the line.
I like it. I like that.
Robots playing basketball. I'm Drake with my hands up. Robots playing baseball. I'm Drake smiling.
Great. Yeah, 2020, the year we brought memes into the podcast.
Not only did we bring memes into the podcast, vocal representation of a visual art form. I'm yelling at CJ with my finger pointed at him.
We have been doing this too long. I love it. All right. Speaking of things going on too long, let's talk about the Golden Globes.
Oh, flap, flap, flap. Let's be honest. They went 11 minutes over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it probably would have been fine if friggin' Joaquin Phoenix didn't lose his mind.
Well, I mean, when? 20 years ago? Like, yeah, I know.
Didn't lose his mind and win an award last night. Because I was watching it and I'm like, oh, there's a real good chance that they could come in right at the 3-hour mark.
Do you think he was riding the Gervais wave? Do you think he was planning on going that long when he went up there no matter what? I feel like kind of. It's Joaquin Phoenix, right? Like, it just feels like sandwiched in with everything else that was going on last night, him getting up there and babbling, it felt like just was him kind of getting in on it too.
Let me tell you who was riding the Gervais wave. Let me tell you who legitimately it was planned that they were going to keep talking and going on. And that is Renee Zellweger winning for Judy. Because no word of a lie, she knew the music that they were going to play when it was time to play her off. And everything that she was saying had this added gravitas as they tried to play her off stage. It's the craziest thing. Like, it legitimately felt like she planned to have her words scored by whatever they were going to play. It's crazy. Watch it again.
It's a hell of a power move.
It's like it just feels like she's playing 3-dimensional chess with the blinking light and the playoff music. Nice. And if there's anyone who's going to do that, it's Renee Zellweger, who won for Cold Mountain, Chicago, and can you name the other one that she won for? It's going to blow your mind if you can't.
Bridget Jones?
No, it's nominated for Bridget Jones, but it's not Bridget Jones.
That's a shame. Renee Zellweger, what else? Oh, Jerry Maguire. Yeah.
Nope. First of all, I'm going to blow your mind with Jerry Maguire as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, unless Sejan vetoes it, here's a big reveal about our first very special episode coming next month, or if we do something special with Sarah Bohr Jr. in April.
But yes.
Nurse Betty.
Do
you remember Nurse Betty?
Yes, I do, with Morgan Freeman and stuff,
and
right?
Chris Rock
and Greg Kinnear, right?
Yeah, this crazy. Yeah, man. She won her first Golden Globe for Best Actress in Nurse Betty.
Is Nurse Betty Elmore Leonard?
I don't think so.
I got to look that up.
You have to look that up because I mean,
it's definitely
you say that,
heavily inspired by it, though, right?
Yeah, it feels like it might be, but I'm pretty sure Nurse Betty isn't an Elmore Leonard story. And if I'm wrong, then I don't know. I'll read Maximum Bob again. God, Maximum Bob's a good book, and I liked the TV show. I want to watch that again. But yeah, so Renee Zellweger, and while Sejan's looking it up, I'm gonna blow everybody's mind too. Empire Records. Where Renee Zellweger plays Gina, right? The slut who sleeps with Rex Manning, 1995. 1 year later, she is Dorothy in Jerry Maguire. Two roles that could not be further from one another.
Yeah. I way off with Nurse Betty being Elmore Leonard. The reason why I was thinking that somebody, it's Neil Abute is the director on
Ah,
it.
okay, yeah.
That's what it is. Not that they are anywhere near the same person, but it
No,
was
not
that.
at all. But they're both very iconic in their own ways.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. There's no excuse for what I just did. But yeah, no,
Labute,
it's a and he
he's
didn't write it,
special in
which is
his own way.
yeah. We'll do my anti-Labute cast when we do that special episode, so we won't get into it now. But yeah. So I'm totally down for doing Nurse Betty, and like, I mean, Renee Zellweger, solid, like, strong career. Nothing that I've ever she's never done anything that offends me. Like Gwyneth Paltrow's had some moments where I've been very upset with her as a
Can you
human
believe
being.
that her show, like her Goop thing, is going to be a Netflix short special series?
Yes, because anybody can get a Netflix special nowadays.
Yeah, that's true. I saw the picture of her walking through like ovals, like it's an oval hallway, and I'm like, oh my god, is this series about that? And it is.
I mean, yeah, and if you track if you track the heritage there, she's already been on a couple of different Netflix shows as like guest star. So like she has the connections with Netflix already. She shows up in Jon Favreau's cooking show and stuff like that, and like and so it doesn't surprise me that she's gonna have a Netflix special. That in no way offends me. I know it's gonna upset some people who are gonna feel like they're giving her a platform for her insanity, and they are, but like.
But that's what reality television is.
Right.
Is reality television not a platform for insanity? Like
I am clearly in a very privileged position when I say things like this, but I believe in the idea that every platform, like every voice should have a platform, so that I can then say, oh yeah, that's nuts, I don't have to listen to that. Like I need that to be out there personally, right? So like I'm very interested in her getting a show like that because I am very interested in her and what she's into, only so that I can be like, okay, here is why I disagree with everything she's saying right now. So that's
in just 2 weeks, Sejin, he's going to be buying a bunch of jade eggs. I'm not going to ask what they're for. I'm just going to say Sejin's going to be buying a bunch of jade eggs in a couple of weeks.
And a lot of books on Kegel exercises. So there's, but yeah, so Renee Zellweger, I feel like, is in that same era of filmmaking, right? But seems to have come out of it like really doing really well for herself.
The crazy thing about the Renee Zellweger thing, and this is going to blow your mind, she was nominated 4 years in a row, but then she won the 3 years that the Patriots won the Super Bowl. So, like, is it a coincidence, or is the Zellweger dynasty deeply connected to the initial Patriots dynasty?
Oh man, I mean, Jerry Maguire, we could maybe make some weird conspiracy theory off of her being in a football movie.
Oh my god, football movie! Oh my god, a Cuba Gooding Jr. and he was in A Few Good Men.
Damn.
But yeah, so the Golden Globes happened last night. We've been talking about them like adjacent. We've been talking Golden Globe adjacent. To answer your question, I don't know. Joaquin Phoenix almost felt like he was still in character. To which my mother said, so I guess he wasn't acting in Joker. That was her clever observation.
I mean, isn't that what everybody always says about him, though? Like, when he did his whole, like, off the deep end, I swear I was only making a documentary move with, who did he piss off there?
I couldn't think of it last night either.
David Letterman.
Yeah.
When he's super pissed off David Letterman by showing up on his show and just was a total asshole, and then like a couple of months later was like, oh, I was doing a character like Sacha Baron Cohen. It's okay, right? Because we all loved Borat, so I'm allowed to act like this, right? It's like, no, that's not what we meant.
No, that's not why we love Borat, Joaquin.
Yeah. But like, you know, so this is him. Like, this is just him as a person. But that's what leads me to believe that no matter what the situation was last night, he was going to behave that way. But man, it sure didn't help being surrounded by all of this shit about I don't know, fucking sticking it to the libs or whatever the fuck last night turned into. Apparently,
it was like the whole plant-based thing about it. That it was like there were so many weird things that like I'm gonna just try to watch the award portion of this, and I'll sort out the rest of it tomorrow because the awards. Some really cool stuff, like Elton John and Bernie Taupin finally got to accept an award together for the original song from Rocket Man, and that was cool to watch. Yeah. And you know, like, oh god, all this great acting that was just on display and these films, but things that I want to focus on. I already shared my mother's real poignant observation that she's not wrong. Like he was nuts. Have you seen Joaquin Phoenix acceptance speech?
Yes.
Have you heard it though? Because they just kind of sat on the censor button a lot because he was dropping F-bombs.
I was gonna say I don't think I heard much of it, but no, I saw it. Yeah.
So that whole thing, and not wrong, like not crazy to say that, but my father, and it's something that we talked about earlier with like, should these Netflix movies be in the running? And we'll get to that because, we have an answer from last night where he's like, so Fleabag, it's 6 episodes a season, 2 season. I feel like it's weird that it is in the same level as like the regular series and not the limited series. And
like, I don't disagree, but like Game of Thrones was only 8 episodes a season, and it's been in the running for the last 5 years.
I know it's just the thing that he said, and I'm like, well, there's reasons for that. And I'm like, first of all, I'm like, you don't need to explain how the BBC makes TV to me, Dad. I've been watching British television for like half of my life. But right. You're not wrong. Like that's a good observation. But that's been my whole question about the Globes, because he didn't get my whole thing about Netflix. But then when he says that, I'm like, that's just the thing. Like, award shows, and why award shows lack any merit, in my estimation, in my opinion, is because there's not like a distinct metric that they really measure them by. It's not like football where, these are the 2 teams, this is the regiment and practice that they have to do. They all have to play X amount of games, and then based on how well they did, they move into the next thing. Like, they're not really on an even playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's... Or maybe they are, and I just don't know those rules, and they should do a better job with that. So,
in terms of saying limited series, and part of the reason why I think your dad actually has a good point is that, what makes the difference between a limited series and an ongoing series that just happens to have short seasons is the idea that the work behind it, the thought behind it, the artistic
merit,
ethos behind it, and merit behind it, is all dictated by the fact that, do these people think this is something they're going to be working on for just the next 6 months, or something they think they're potentially going to be working on for the next 10 years, right? Like, going into Game of Thrones season 1, there's and we can see this in any show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just look at season 1 of any show and then look at any other seasons past it. Going into season 1 of Game of Thrones and not knowing whether or not it's going to take off, there's a definite attitude to that show. There's a definite feel to that show in season 1 that just isn't present after that. And I don't want to call it fan service, because it's not the idea that they know they have to make fans happy. It's that they know that they have the opportunity to try things differently and to do things in a way that they might not necessarily have had you saw it more often back in the past when you had a pilot versus the first season, right? But now shows get greenlit for an entire 8 episodes just so that they can just get a story out there, and then hey, maybe you get picked up to do more seasons later, right? And so there is this sense that, like, when something is a limited series, it knows it's just going to be this thing. And this is what happens with the BBC a lot. They're like, hey, this is just going to be 3 episodes and then we're walking away. This is never going to be a thing again unless we really dictate it. But you cannot think of it that way, right? And that's what happens with a lot of those shows, right? Whereas there's a mentality with shows over here that, like, hey, if it's not getting at least 3 seasons, it's not a success. And there's a lot of weirdness in the way that people put themselves into the work, and thus the way that they can be judged when they know they're going into an ongoing series of 24 episodes a season for the rest of the season versus something like a limited series versus something like a movie, so it becomes a really interesting conversation in terms of, like, what did the artists intend when they were making this really has to be an important part of that conversation and things like that. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that we're not always privy to when they decide to put a show here or a movie there, and what makes it a comedy or musical versus a drama when I feel like this, or what puts somebody in a supporting actor role when it should have been that. And it's like, well, because of the intention behind what we were doing, maybe that fits. And we don't get that part of the conversation. We just never will. So, like, we're left in these weird positions where we're not getting all of the information in terms of what the Academy understands, or in this case, what the Globe, what do they call themselves? The
Hollywood Foreign Press.
The Hollywood Foreign Press. We're not privy to whatever it is that they think that was trying to be done there. you know, and sometimes they get it wrong. Like I don't mean to say that like we don't know everything so we can't judge them. We can definitely call them out when we see weird shit, like shows that only have 6 episodes being held up against a show that has 22. Like we should say something about that, right? But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's just it made me happy that there is a level where he understands it, because talking about the Netflix, but also you mentioned something. It's strange to me that playing Mr. Rogers in a film called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Tom Hanks got nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah. Like, what do you know about the movie?
I mean, I know that it's more about the guy who's writing the article about him,
Right.
But it's just one of those things where it's like, from an optics standpoint, though, it's strange to say that.
And so everything that I was saying, right, taking into account like what the intention is, he's clearly intended to be the main figure of that film, even though he's not the protagonist of that film necessarily. He is clearly meant to be the figure, like the character study, the figurehead, the what everything is going towards is putting this, and you can see that. You can see that in the marketing. You can see that in the film. You can see that in who they got to play. You know, they got Tom Hanks to play Fred Rogers. They didn't get Tom Hanks to play the reporter, you know?
Right.
So, like, you're not wrong. That's a super weird pull, right?
Yeah. It just feeds into what you said. But what I really want to talk about in terms of what happened at the Globes last night is there were 4 movies that were straight to Netflix films. Only one of them I know that had a theatrical run, and even then, hotly contested whether or not that was going to happen, and that being The Irishman. The others being The Two Popes, Marriage Story, and My Name is Dolomite. And none of those movies walked away with an award. So it makes me wonder what's going to happen at the Oscars.
Oh, I think it's a sign of things to come. I know we talk about how you can't always say that with the Globes as much as like people like to, but I think this is definitely one of those moments where I'm okay saying I'm pretty sure it's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately where I am as well. It's one of those situations where I'm like, if they couldn't even get the Hollywood Foreign Press to acknowledge that The Irishman was the best drama out of these, or even Marriage Story or The Two Popes, right? Because by all accounts, excellent films from everyone I've talked to who saw them. And not to say that 1917 isn't a great film. Well, there is like the little bugbear of the fact that it doesn't release until Friday.
Right. The fact that it's not out yet is a little. Yeah.
So it feels a little marketing-y, to ride Joaquin Phoenix's coattails, and it's a competition to get people to watch so that the TV people can make money. But it's just one of those situations where I'm like, I don't know if 1917 necessarily is going to get the nomination as the best picture at the Oscars, despite it winning. I haven't seen it yet. And I know that like it's got a lot of those things. It's
a Christopher Nolan World War I epic about a fucking like baller spy story, like Men Behind Enemy Lines. It's fucking Oscar bait if I've ever seen.
But it's not Christopher Nolan. It's Sam Mendes. So yeah.
But didn't Nolan produce it or something?
As far as I know, it's all Sam Mendes.
I mean, but even then, Sam
Mendes is no slouch, and he knows how to make a movie. It's just one of those situations where, like, I don't know enough about it. The only thing I know about it is that it's apparently one long shot, but like how Birdman was. So I can see it getting it, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, I really don't know anything about you. I at least know about the other nominees. And then, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think it winning Best Comedy or Musical definitely indicates that it will get a nomination for Best Picture at the Oscars. And I know that Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood, but I would be real surprised if in a month we're talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood being the Best Picture of 2019.
I don't think that's going to stick in a way that, I don't know, man. For the last few Tarantino films, you've heard the conversation of like, is he getting a little too big for his britches? It's like essentially more and more leash he's given, the more off the rail the film seems to get for a lot more people, right? And this seems to be the one where the scales have really tipped. Not for me personally, but for a lot of the people that I talk to about Tarantino movies, about like, aren't you excited the next one's coming out? That number's been dwindling over the years, and sure enough, this seems to be the one where suddenly I'm like alone in a room. So like,
I feel that way too. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who feels that way, because I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I absolutely loved it, and I feel like I go to these people who like won't shut the fuck up about Inglourious Bastards or Django Unchained, and I'm like, "What do you think about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?" And they're like, "Oh, it was boring," and I'm like, "Oh, well, that was not what I expected you to say."
An interesting point was made to me the other day, and I don't really think about this sort of thing, so like I'm not surprised I never thought of it before, but it's really kind of the first one of his movies that's a real like masturbatory in terms of movie making itself. You know what I mean? Like he always is indulgent in whatever he's doing, right? Like he's super indulgent into the kung fu movies and the Kill Bill style, or the westerns that you see when you're looking at Django or Hateful Eight, right? Like, so he's always indulgent. He's always like overindulgent. Like that's why you go to a Tarantino film for me. So like that. So the fact he's overindulgent isn't the thing that I think is upsetting people. I think what seems to be upsetting people, and again, this was only brought up to me just a few days ago, so this may not hold water, but it's the fact that it's a movie about movies, and people seem to really not dig that nowadays. Like it feels like it's too much for some people. For me and you, people that love movies, I'm sure that it comes as welcome, right? Like getting to see Tarantino dig his big fat teeth into like the idea of movie making and what Hollywood used to be like is definitely like, yeah, sure, I'll pay to see that. I'll pay to see that twice over. Like, but for some people, that's actually that's a point for them where they're done, where it basically just feels like Hollywood patting itself on the back for 3 hours.
I definitely don't agree with that summation. Not your summation, but the idea that it's Hollywood patting itself on the back for 3 hours. Because Hollywood feels more like a setting than the actual driving story of that. Like it's really just like it. And I don't like movies that are just like a character study about a person. Like it feels like Leonardo DiCaprio's character happens to be an actor. Yeah. Like it doesn't feel like
Hollywood. It feels like the kind of story where this is Hollywood is the only place a story like this could happen.
Right. And so I guess I understand the indulgence there. But the most masturbatory of Quentin Tarantino's films, and you can come fight me on this, is Death Proof. No ifs, ands, or buts.
I was going to say Hateful Eight, but I mean, Death Proof I'll give you, because it's
Death Proof is the Little Nicky of Quentin Tarantino films.
Okay, all right, I'll go with you there. Let's do that.
I mean, it really is. There's so many references to other stuff, and just
where's Popeye fucking Rose?
No, but it's like the Red Apple cigarettes and like characters and stuff that's mentioned in it, and I'm just like,
to the point where it breaks its own narrative at points.
Yeah,
like it references things out of time from
when that movie is taking place.
Right, and it's just like, okay, like you've completely broken the in what I mean is in the sense of the Grindhouse experience, there is a radio. There's like a moment where it references Rodriguez's film there in that one.
Planet Terror.
Yeah. There's a moment where it references something that happened in Planet Terror as if it happened weeks ago, but from what we know in Planet Terror, within a matter of a couple of days, the entire world is destroyed, right? So like Death Proof wouldn't be happening. So like there's this weird moment where the entire like narrative of the two movies breaks in a way that is funny because it's supposed to be funny, but like what you're talking about in something that gets so far up its own ass that it just fucking breaks its own timeline.
Yeah, it goes so far up its own ass it punches through its own mouth. Yeah, and then it's just left on the floor struggling for air.
Yeah, I think for me the reason why I don't even think about Death Proof sometimes is the fact that it is meant to be that. Like he came at you saying like, this is me alone in a room with my camera and these actors, and I'm just gonna do this thing. And so like, yeah, I expect that one to be like in all intents and purposes as masturbatory as possible, right? Like but it's in terms of the mass produced, like I am making an art film, this is the first one that I've heard people really kind of turn against in an interesting way. And I couldn't put my finger on it until somebody said to me, I think the thing that people aren't liking about it is the fact that it's a movie about movies, and that really kind of rubs people the wrong way. And it does, actually. Like we joke about like Hollywood loves movies about movies, but we say that meaning that nobody else does, right?
That is true. There's these things where like, oh, the artist won Best Picture, but like people don't care about silent movie making.
Yeah.
Like
name 5 people around you that you know saw the artist and like can still talk to you about it. Like didn't just like turn their brain off for 2 hours just to say that they saw the Best Picture that year.
Yeah. It's strange. This was good. I'm also going to say, since we brought up Planet Terror and that whole Grindhouse experience, there is this moment for me that is really telling. And it's because I've read the scripts to both of them. And it's the missing reel.
Yeah, we've talked about the missing reel before. Yeah. At least you and I have. I'm sure we've talked about it on the show.
But like, just like the fact that the missing reel for Rodriguez was an excuse to just flip everything on its fucking head and bring everybody together. But the missing reel for Quentin Tarantino was basically cut scenes so that when you bought the buying the movie on DVD would be the only way to see the whole film.
Yeah, I mean, devil's advocate, I feel like it's just 2 different approaches to the idea. It's narrative versus ludological. Like if you want to get like,
no, you're not wrong.
It, right?
You got
right?
That's the perfect way to put it. It
right.
doesn't change the fact that it's just like,
what would have been the better story is if he filmed the scenes, cut it to do the missing reel joke, and to this day had not released it. If it was something existing somewhere on a cutting room floor and he openly admitted like, oh, I had that scene written, we filmed it, and I cut it out for the joke and nobody will ever see it, I'd have a lot more respect for the joke. It's the fact that then you can get the unedited version immediately available to you is like what makes it feel like a marketing ploy.
Yes. And that's really, and I think that's the moment where I was like, okay, so Death Proof, I'm sorry. I enjoyed you as an experience in the theater with Planet Terror, but I'm glad I bought Planet Terror and only rented Death Proof.
Nah, I love Death Proof, but like I all around just really enjoy that film for what it is, and if that's not your jam,
I'll watch Vanishing Point if I want to see Death Proof. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I mean the original Vanishing Point with Cleavon Little as the DJ, not the weird remake. That remake is weird.
Yeah, man.
All right.
So do we feel any need to address Ricky Gervais at all, and like what happened there?
Yeah, no,
like,
we can talk about it. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it almost feels like Ricky Gervais was asked and said, I'm going to do it. But in the back of his mind, he said, this is going to be the last time they ever fucking ask me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I feel like that's the way he approaches his life in general. Yeah. So that doesn't, yeah.
It's weird that they asked him back, considering what happened the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but on a real level, and like, because everybody talks about the Golden Globes as it's the night that Hollywood gets to have fun. Mm-hmm. It's the night that these people get to drink and just like have fun together, which like I take some issue with that because, yes, they work. Being an actor and being in movies is a job. It's not like easy street all the time, but I find it hard to believe that Tom Hanks is only having fun at the Golden Globes. I find it hard to believe that Brad Pitt's only having fun the night of the Golden Globes and the other 364 days.
Hey man, I had a lot of fun in theater. I had a lot of fun in band, but every year we would do a band banquet or we would do a theater banquet, and that was the greatest night ever, man. Like I get it.
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
that.
no,
that
I mean, and that's what I'm saying. And that's what I realized that last night watching the Golden Globes. I'm like, oh, you know why you don't appeal to me? I fucking hated the theater banquets. I did not want to go to the cast party, and you're a cast party times everything that came out last year.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's exactly it. Yeah.
So if you're talking about the fact that this is going to be this is not a night about politics in a lot of ways. So his words about like, come up here, accept your award, thank your God, and move on. Like, I get that. I get where he's coming from, where he's like, let's just make this a night where we're having fun. And use your voices the other 364 days. But let's not do it tonight. Let's keep this moving so that the fun can keep happening. So we don't have moments where we're like, oh, now we're all sad thinking about what, Patricia Arquette just brought up.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about a guy that gets kicked off of Twitter more often than anybody for getting into fucking like geopolitical quagmires. Like he gets into these huge arguments with
Right.
world leaders and people all over the place all the time.
And,
So it's a little rich coming from the guy that
right.
like
No, you're
is the
not
worst
wrong.
example of that every other day of the
You're
year.
not wrong. You're not wrong. But you actually bringing that up to me is where I put together my theory about what he meant. And like you said, is what he's doing every other day of the year is getting into these fights and getting thrown off of Twitter and having that stuff. So it lends more credence to my belief that he just wanted to have fun last night. And he wanted everybody to just adopt this let's have fun tonight mentality. Tonight is not the night that we need to change the world. We can do that tomorrow.
Yeah, but then he came back to it like 2 or 3 times throughout the night, or at least not maybe not that exact.
I feel like
attitude,
I
but,
didn't
like,
see him at all. I feel like I saw his opening and I saw him right before the end. I feel like there was a
joke and stuff, and it was a little weird, and like there's for a guy that didn't want to talk about some things, he was not afraid to talk about things last night. It's
okay,
just
but
weird.
but here's the question: does he write the script, or is someone giving him a script?
Dude, I don't know. I mean, I feel like with the things he was saying, he was probably very heavily influential in his own script. I mean, but the whole thing is scripted, right?
Yeah, the whole thing has to be scripted. So I could see Ricky Gervais being handed something and they're like, say this, and then him being Ricky Gervais going off script, but maybe like in the wheelhouse of what was written there.
Now, you know why you can always tell when he goes off script because he instantly corpses.
That's very true. He didn't corpse at all last night.
Yeah.
So talk about that. So maybe that means that everything that he said that we're giving him crap for is just him reading.
And I'm not even giving him crap for it because, like you know,
Right.
we've been talking about this since it happened. But like, I was very open about the fact that like the first time I saw it, it was great. My bigger issue with it, and it might have to do with like the area that I live in or whatever. But like, I have heard nothing but people talking about it today, from the local news this morning to the front page of Reddit blowing up with 6 different posts about it. Everybody breaking down every different joke and talking about how great it was. That again, somebody's sticking it to the liberal elites in Hollywood, and it's like I didn't feel like that's what it was when I first saw it, but now that you've put that spin on it, I hate it. So thanks.
Yeah, but I mean that's the problem with everything. Everything
Right.
can be spun in a negative way. I mean, though of course some things, as history will turn, the negative way that you're viewing it is the right way. Right? Like
Right.
I feel like I should say that in terms of the interpretations we gave of, you know, Revenge of the Nerds and Emilio Estevez and St. Elmo's Fire. Like history has told us, no, those were not characters to be emulated or looked up to. But,
Right.
you know,
No.
something like the Golden Globes, there's always going to be the Fox News and the MSNBC interpretation.
Right.
And that's being broad as friggin' possible, saying
Right.
those two.
No, but yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, and that's where we're at right now, right? Like we're starting off 2020 with possibly going to war in Iran. We had this weird set of the Golden Globes because let's be honest, 2019 was a weird year for movies, and I feel like we say that every year on this podcast, but
Well, we've been sitting in 3 really weird years for movies, CJ.
right.
Like it's like we say that every year, but it's like if we had started this podcast in 2014, I feel like we wouldn't have to say that.
We would have had a couple of years there where things were maybe not so
Not
weird.
so everything is politically charged and has all this meaning behind it. And we're looking at 2019 $7 billion movies for Disney.
Yeah.
Like, where do you, just because we're talking like this, where do you fall on Lion King 2019 as an animated film?
As an animated film? No, it's
Yeah.
not an animated.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I should take that back. I said that really quickly, but now that I'm thinking about it, what else would you call it? I guess I don't know what else I would call it.
Yeah, because I read the article today that Frozen 2 is the most successful animated film, and then in, you know, parentheses, if you just ignore The Lion King.
Yeah.
Because The Lion King has made $300 million more than Frozen 2, which I saw last week, but we don't have time to get to. I liked it, and I didn't really like Frozen 1, so take from that
Good.
what you will.
Yeah, man. There's a bridge book that got put out, a little novella, and I say little, it's actually not little at all. It's quite large. That tells a really good Anna focused story that I encourage everybody to read as well. Super cool. It's got a lot of the stuff that I really liked about Frozen 2 was how there was much more about lore of the world in it, and not just the world, like actual established lore that I could dig my teeth into, like the water pony and shit. So good. But anyway,
The
so
Nyx,
this book
or the Nisse?
Knox, I believe is, yeah, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. The book continues that as well. So just anybody that's interested in continuing that enjoyment.
I'm going to say this about it. I really want someone, and it's probably going to end up being me who does this, to take Frozen 1 and Frozen 2, get rid of all the songs, and just give me all the non-singing parts as one
All
movie.
40 minutes of the non-singing parts.
But I feel like it'd be enjoyable to watch because the songs, and this was my issue with the first Frozen, and to a lesser extent in Frozen 2, it just brings the movie to such a halt for me that like I just shut off until they're talking again and not singing.
I appreciate that you feel that way, but you have to recognize that is not the way the rest of the world feels about
Oh, I
those
know.
movies, right?
Trust me, Sejin. I understand that it's just me. So that's why I want to see, like, I mean, the best example is Kingdom Hearts 3. You get to Arendelle, and all the songs are happening in the background, and you're getting the story from, like, other people. And that was, like, the first time I'm like, oh, Frozen isn't terrible. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the songs just got in the way for me. And then, you know, when Anna sang her song in Frozen 2 before, like, the big thing happened, I don't want to ruin it here, like, not into, like, the last minutes of the episode, I drifted to, like, things that were going on. I didn't even listen to what it was. My mind just, like, immediately shut off from the movie, and I started thinking about other things. And I'm
it's
like,
interesting because you felt
bad.
kind of this way about Moana as well, and like I'm just wondering if maybe you're just not down on like this like neo Disney where it's using this very Broadway style. You know, it used to be that the movie came first and then Disney thought about the Broadway show after. And that's clearly not what's been happening for the last 10 years, right? They've always been thinking about it from the Broadway sense first, and then how do we bring that to the animated movie? And I think it's worked for a lot of people. I think it's brought a lot of people back to Disney that were kind of like losing faith in them for a while. But you, who stuck with them all along, it almost sounds like you feel betrayed by that move.
I mean, like, betrayed is not the word I would use.
Betrayed is a very extreme word to use, yes. Yeah. But what are we if not fucking working in extremes?
That's true. We're hyperbolic if nothing else at the Say Report. But yeah, it's just one of those things. But what I really want to say is Spies in Disguise. Go see it. Spies in Disguise is epic. It's excellent. It's incredible. And
I've been seeing a ton of ad stuff for it specifically because I've been getting real down on watching Tom Holland and Will Smith's exploits on YouTube. Like they've got one video together and then they do their own stuff that has just been amazing. All advertising the movie. Like for the last like 2 months, that's all they've been doing is pitching this movie. And so I've seen so many previews, specifically the scene when he first gets turned into a bird in the kitchen and he's looking at his butt. Like that joke I have seen like 6 times in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I cannot I'm like, this is going to be fun. And that's all it's going to be. No, it's legit. It's a very good film. And I just want people to go see it because I still can't believe that it is what it is. And I would be very surprised if this week's Say Report Jr. is not Dale just lavishing praise over where they took that film.
I wonder if it's playing at the brew house near me, the movie and beer place, because it seems like the perfect movie to go and grab a beer and sit and watch with friends.
Yeah. And then, of course, I saw Uncut Gems, but we'll save that for next week because there's way too much to unpack for it to be like the tag at the end of this episode. So see Uncut Gems if you can, because we're going to talk about it next week. We're also going to talk about some other fun games that we played this weekend, but I want them to be talked about during the next episode, not during this episode.
Fair enough.
So think about what that could mean out over at home. Siege, do you have anything else to add at the end of this episode?
No, at the end of the year, Christmas and all that stuff, we ended up getting a couple of different video games, and I just want to I'm never going to go too deep into this stuff because I think if I did, it would be a podcast unto itself. But Super Mario Party for the Switch. Best Mario Party they've ever made. For like if you found yourself saying I don't like Mario parties and you find yourself stuck having to buy one because like a relative wants one or something, Super Mario Party is the one to buy, because even if you don't like Mario Party games, I think it's super enjoyable. So that was fun getting into some games on that over the holiday. The Katamari Damacy re-release for Switch, also super good. And I'm only talking about this stuff because I felt like a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about Spyro on the Switch, like I am finding that system to be a delight. like every time I put a game in that system. Like Spyro was a rare miss for me, and it's only because of the fact that that particular series of games just needs more horsepower behind it. And who knows, in the coming years with what they're talking about doing with the Switch, maybe it'll finally get it. But like there's been some really good stuff going on. Necrodancer, I finished Cadence of Hyrule, and then immediately was like, well, now I got to go back to Necrodancer, especially because the Switch edition has like new DLC and all this other good stuff with it. So like getting down on that stuff has been awesome. So yeah, just having an all around good time with that.
Excellent. Super Mario Party, the only reason I don't own it is because I found the one that came with the Joy-Cons, and I was like, oh, I don't want to get it. I'll get you later. And then they went up to like $200 for that package. Mm-hmm. And I'm just mad that I could have bought it for $60. But I was like, I'll do you later. So yeah. I just
you might have made the right choice, though. I am also getting some pretty serious drifting. Like I'm thinking Pro Controller from here on out for the rest of that system's life.
The only problem, I mean, that's the real issue is that Super Mario Party is one of those games where it's Joy-Con or nothing.
Yeah.
So just buyer beware on that one. And also, I'll talk Switch. I got River City Girls on the Switch.
Nice.
Because lo and behold, Best Buy came out with physical editions from limited run games.
Woo.
So you didn't have to, support it and maybe get the game. I mean, Limited Run is very good about that, but I don't really love paying for something and then waiting.
Yeah.
Like, I like that I went to Best Buy last night, gave them $30 and got the game in hand.
Yeah,
and there were a lot of issues when that game first came out. Like, there was slowdown. It didn't run well. I played it leading up to the show, and it's great on the Switch. So if you still haven't dived into River City Girls, the Switch version is out there, and it is worth playing now. They fixed a lot of the issues. So that's it for me. If you want to yell at me about the fact that, Cameron is definitely the fake one, or whatever I said earlier, you can find me on Twitter at Devin D. Decker.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about how you're Ferris Bueller in your life, you can find me at Siege versus the World.
All right. So that's 2020 Super Podcasting. Will run us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so it's delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.